The DJI Mini 5 Pro just released last week, and there's a ton of hype around it. So why did I decide to buy the almost 1-year-old Air 3S instead? In this video, I'm going to go over some of the specs, the real world use, as well as why I think the Air 3S might be the better option for some of us, especially if you're in the US. Like all of you, I've been waiting on this one for a while, expecting it to release in the US, and then it just didn't really happen. Of course, you can import it. I guess you can make a trip to DJI in New York City, but there's not really an option that isn't going to cost you more than $1,300. So exactly as I mentioned in the last video, I was hoping this release would free up some inventory of other drones, and thankfully it did. For the first time in months, I was able to find the Air 3S Fly More combo on Adorama for $17.99, and it arrived just 2 days later. As of right now, it's been increased to $19.99, and it shows they're on back order now. Why did I make this decision? Especially when I already own the Mavic 3 Pro. Realistically, just looking for a everyday drone, something that's a little bit smaller and takes up a little bit less space in my bag, and one that I think complements the other when it comes to a professional setting. So number one, the dual camera system with the Air 3S. I think one of my favorite features of the Mavic 3 Pro that I've been using for about 1.5 years now is the multiple camera lenses and being able to get those different focal lengths. Because of course, when you bring in lens compression and being able to capture these with the drone camera, it's so handy, especially when you're shooting things like real estate. You want more of the house, less of the surroundings. And both of the main cameras use the same 1-inch 50 megapixel 24mm sensor on the Air 3S and the Mini 5 Pro, while the medium telephoto gives you a 48 megapixel 70mm focal length. And of course, it's not as high quality, but it still gives you a very usable image in my opinion. Number two, better flight performance. The Air 3S features a max speed of almost 47 miles an hour, while the Mini 5 Pro with the standard battery gives us around 40, and the long life battery increases this just slightly, and both handle up to 26 miles an hour of wind resistance, but this weighs almost 3 times as much. So we have 724 grams versus the roughly 250. And coming from the Mavic 3 Pro at over 950 grams, I've been flying DJI drones for about 10 years. This is already going to be the smallest drone that I've ever used. And personally, I'm flying this in the winter, all here in New England. It's cold, the temps are in the negatives, and we have that Atlantic Ocean breeze coming in all year long. The wind is a big deal. So you're trying to get better performance if you're flying in less than ideal conditions with the wind. And like I said, I don't really care as much about the weight, but this is quieter, it's smaller, and more nimble than anything that I've ever used. But at the same time, you still want to feel stable when you're flying, and I think this is going to do that. Number three, price and availability. I just bought this Air 3S Fly More combo with the screen and the ND filters for $17.99. And the Mini 5 Pro, after import pricing, you're looking at closer to $1,400 in most situations. And that hassle just didn't really feel worth it to save $400, especially with all these other things that I've mentioned. And yes, this is an incredible value for the price. These mini drones are just unbelievable. The Mini 4 Pro released at $1,099 in the US years ago. That was a $700 difference. So it was worth it then. But if you're in Europe or somewhere else, you're paying closer to roughly $1,100 or less for the Fly More combo. Something to keep in mind, those extended batteries are 150 instead of 100. So for 3 of those, if you're not able to get the Fly More combo plus to get this closer to the Air 3S, this brings it up an extra $150, bringing that total, even closer. So yes, it's a great deal. These mini drones come at this price point for a reason though. There's some sacrifices, and to me, for $400 more, those sacrifices didn't justify this small price difference. Because there really comes a point where that bang for buck slowly starts to taper off, and then something else becomes a better value. The Air 3S released a year ago in October for $15.99, so it's only gone up $200, which is actually really good, all things considered. So this just felt like a better value at these current prices right now. And like I said, of course, if I was able to get this for the $1,100, yeah, I would absolutely buy one. And in fact, I still may, if I'm able to get one, somewhere in that range here within the next few months. Number 4, these just have better range. The Air 3S already comes with the most recent DJI 04 transmission, which is actually better than the Mavic 3 Pro, and it gives you almost 20 miles or 32 kilometers of range. Compare that to the 04 transmission on the Mini 5 Pro, and that gives you about 15 miles with the larger batteries, and it's even less if you have the standard battery. Regardless, you're really never going to be flying that far away, but it still is a pretty substantial difference when you think about the environments that you're shooting in. A lot of the times you have a lot of buildings, a lot of mountains, and it's just going to give you a better connection. Personally, I'm never flying out of line of sight. So for me, it's just about having a more solid connection, especially, you're flying in cities where there's a lot of buildings, or you're flying for real estate. You're shooting a house that has a lot of other houses around and obstacles that might take away from your transmission. And this is just going to give you a better connection for the most part compared to the Mini 5 Pro. But realistically, they're so close that either one is just going to be a lot better than the old 03 transmission of previous DJI drones. And finally, number 5, perceived value. Now, this one might not be as big of a deal for you, but personally, I'm using this for professional use almost 100% of the time. Remember when we started first showing up to video shoots with just a little DSLR camera, and the client looks at you like, oh, my daughter has that same camera, even though it's not. Well, the same can be said for drones. I can't tell you how many times I've pulled out my Mavic 3 Pro and a new client who's never seen it before has said, wow, that thing is serious. That looks so high tech. And whether you want to believe this or not, this matters when you're in business. Do you want to show up with a little drone that looks like a toy? Even if the images are essentially the same, they don't know that. And if they think the equipment is cheap, or if they could just buy one for a few $100s at the store and get a similar result to save money that they're paying you, they will, whether they're doing that legally or not. It makes you replaceable. And I've had clients that had their own little mini DJI drones that they used to take their own drone photos on. And the first few times I worked with them, they said they didn't need me to do it because they have their own. And then a big listing comes along. I pull out a much larger and more professional looking drone, and they see how much better the images are. And then they ask you if you can do it going forward. Perception matters in business, and this is just a more professional looking drone. Now, if the size isn't an issue for you and wherever you're located, you need something below 249 grams, obviously the Mini 5 Pro is going to be the better option. Just something to keep in mind. I'm seeing this everywhere. Even with the standard battery, this thing looks like it weighs close to 252 grams, which people are freaking out about, asking why DJI would even release this close with the weight limit. There's this huge controversy. I'm not going to read too much into it because this really isn't a huge deal to me. But in order to be compliant in much of Europe, it has to be under that 249 grams. Otherwise, it's a different classification and you have to register it and get different licenses based on that weight. On the camera side, these are essentially the same when you take away that second camera lens. They're both 50 megapixel stills, 4K 120. They offer the same intelligent flight modes, better flight time if you use the extended batteries on the Mini 5 Pro. Both come with 42 gigabytes of internal storage, and these are incredibly similar in a lot of areas, but for me, I want something a bit bulkier. The ability to travel isn't as important for what I use it for. It's got better range, it has a second camera lens, and for what I'm using for, this just makes sense. Now, I'm still using the Mavic 3 Pro on bigger projects, but for everyday use, the Air 3S is the better drone for me in this situation. Now, that being said, if I want to use this for more travel creation, and if I wasn't paying the import fees, the Mini 5 Pro might be the better option, especially when you take into consideration the Mini 5 Pro shoots true vertical 4K 60. and the Air 3S shoots 2.7K. If you want to save money on the best travel drone with the most up-to-date features, the Mini 5 Pro is it. If you're looking for kind of a mixture of price, size, features, especially in the US, the Air 3S might suit you better. So what do you guys think? I'd love to hear why you think one is better than the other for you. And if you want to learn more about what's going on with the DJI situation here in the US, I've linked a video right here that answers the 10 most asked questions. Subscribe if you haven't yet. I hope you guys learned something. My name's Devin. I run a creative business in New England, and I post videos just like this every week. I'll see you guys in the next one.